All right, let's get back at it. This week we're going to be talking about diuretics, antihypertensives, and anticoagulants. Diuretics are going to be anything that helps you pee. Kidneys, the primary function is to maintain your water balance, your electrolyte balance, your acid-base balance. Filters out your nitrogenous waste, also salts like sodium, potassium, chloride, that kind of stuff. We'll go through the physiology of urine formation, and then we'll get into how these different parts can be affected by diuretics. Okay, so urine formation, it all starts with this superfiltrate coming out in the glomerulus. The active part, or like the filtering part of the kidney, is your nephron. Here you can see an example of a nephron where you have your glomerulus, proximal convoluted tubules, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubules, and then your collecting ducts. Throughout this urine formation process, you're going to first get a superfiltrate where a whole lot of stuff comes out, and then you're going to get reabsorption. So going from the superfiltrate, getting reabsorbed back into the body, into the blood and the tissue surrounding. And then you're going to get secretion, where it comes back from the blood into the urine, and then kind of a balancing between this reabsorption and secretion. This is really important in maintaining blood pressure, because if you pull out water, you are decreasing the amount of blood, because the main component of blood is water. And so as blood comes in here, in this filtrate, you're going to pull out a lot of water and a lot of other stuff, right? And then depending on how much water you bring back in, can control how much your blood pressure is. It also controls your sodium balance. Sodium is really important. We've talked about voltage-gated sodium channels, right? We've talked about how sodium comes in with like muscle contraction. And so we need sodium to carry out normal functions, right? A lot of the sodium in your body is extracellular. You keep it outside of the cell, but it's still within the body, and you need this sodium. There's these juxtaglomerular cells. These cells found around the blood vessels just before the glomerulus, and they respond to blood pressure. So you have these cells here, and if blood pressure is too low, they cause the kidney to release renin. Renin is a hormone that stimulates angiotensin, which goes through angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2. And what angiotensin does is it constricts your blood vessels. And we'll talk about this more, especially when we get to antihypertensives. And so if you have low blood pressure here, you're going to release renin, which causes angiotensin, which causes your blood vessels to constrict, which is going to increase your blood pressure, right? Angiotensin also stimulates aldosterone. Aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid released from the adrenal medulla, and what it does is it helps to regulate sodium and potassium balances. And so it causes a loss of potassium to retain more sodium, which retains more water. So that also raises your blood pressure. Because water is really clingy. It's just going to follow like sodium around. Wherever sodium goes, water's going to go. So if you have a lot of sodium in your pee, you're going to have a lot of water in your pee. If you have a lot of sodium in your body, you're going to have a lot of water in your body. It's just going to follow it around. So basically, you start with this superfiltrate, reabsorption, secretion. Here we're looking at the glomerulus, and you can see it's going to filter out your water, electrolytes, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, urea, uric acid, creatine, a whole bunch of stuff, right? But large things like blood cells, some of your larger proteins are all going to stay inside the blood vessel. They're not going to be able to come out into this filtrate. So if you're peeing blood, that's a bad thing. That means you have issues in your kidney, probably like nephritis or something like that. Or you could have damage in your urethra, typically due to like bladder stones or kidney stones. So lots of stuff comes out in this filtrate, and then we reabsorb it as we go through. So as we come down here, we're looking at a renal tubule. This is going to be in the PTC, the proximal convoluted tubule. You can tell it's the PTC because it has these large villi or microvilli that helps increase the surface area. So this is in the tube inside the PCT, and this is going to be in the body or where the blood is, right? And so you see it that we have two ways to retain sodium in this section. One is you have a cation exchanger. This cation exchanger is going to take sodium and exchange it with hydrogens. And so this makes your urine slightly acidic as you're bringing out hydrogen ions. And then that sodium can come in here and get back into the body. You can also see right here we have a sodium-potassium exchanger. So bringing in sodium, putting potassium into these renal tubules. Down here, you also bring in bicarbonates. Down here, we also have an anion exchanger going on, where we can exchange chloride ions with your anions, and then we can bring in sodium too, so it kind of can get exchanged with chloride transport. Sodium helps for glucose to get retransported in, so you have this sodium glucose transport, so you can reabsorb glucose, and then again sodium potassium right here, pumping sodium in and potassium into the cell. I guess sodium out of the cell and then potassium into the cell to go into this paratubular capillary. And then as we go down the loop of Henle, sodium gets reabsorbed with chloride, and that's kind of what you're seeing over here. So kind of a summary of all this is right here, you're going to have your superfiltrate, then you're going to have your tubular reabsorption. So all this stuff starts getting reabsorbed up here in the proximal convoluted tubule. These things start getting secreted from the tubules into the body, back to the blood. Then down here, really important, this loop of Henle for water reabsorption. And then sodium, chloride, potassium in the thicker part of the loop. In your distal convoluted tubules, again, sodium, chloride, bicarbonate, water, secreting your acids, potassium, and nitric. And then as we come down, more water, more urea to concentrate that urine. And all your diuretics, you can see where they are working. So your osmotic diuretics work here on the superfiltrate. We'll talk about these more in a little bit, but it helps to bring in a lot more stuff to the filtrate. So you're bringing a lot more molecules in here and keeping it very concentrated with water. Your carbonic anhydrases work right here at the PTC. Loop diuretics work on the loop. Your thiazide and thiazide-likes work here at the distal convoluted. Potassium sparing, again, at the end of the distal convoluted. And that's where you are going to be losing a lot of potassium. And so they work here to keep potassium from being thrown out. A lot of these diuretics, you're going to see a lot of potassium wasting. A lot of potassium goes out in the urine because they're trying to keep sodium. Then your ADH antagonist work here in the collecting duct. Basically telling you the different types of classes and then the different types of drugs, your adverse effects or side effects that go along with those. And we'll go through each of these individually. So the first we're going to talk about are your osmotic diuretics, and we'll pick up with those in the next section.